Meet the computer you can talk to. With Copilot on Windows, working, creating, and collaborating is as easy as talking. Got writer's block? Share your screen with Copilot Vision to help spark inspiration, and use Copilot Voice to have a conversation and brainstorm ideas. Or maybe you need some tech help. With Copilot Vision, Copilot sees what you see. Let Copilot talk you through step-by-step guidance so you can master new apps, games, and skills faster. Try now at windows.com/Copilot.
Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell you scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse wherever you stream podcasts. Just be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. The Red Treehouse is dedicated to my dad. I love you, Pop. It's a cold and rainy day here in Virginia. Lots of wind, crisp air, and patches of ice covering the ground. And it's the perfect weather for telling you 5 of the creepiest true scary stories that I've come across. Today, we're talking doppelgangers, ghosts, strange things in the woods, and a sleepwalking encounter with the spirit. Before that, though, I wanted to give a quick shout out to a few of our newest Patreon members: Myra, Kimberly, Dave, Allison, Carrie, and Sharon. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Alright, it's time to sit back, turn down the lights, and pull up the covers as I tell you 5 of the scariest stories to keep you up at night. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. Story 1. One time, I was having a tense conversation with someone that I was close to years ago. The conversation quickly devolved into a passive-aggressive fight that ended with the other person getting in the car and driving away. As I started heading back inside, the other person came back, got out of the car, and started our conversation again. The tone of voice was totally different, and the stance was different, and the feeling in the air was completely off. I don't know how else to explain it. As the conversation progressed, the other person started saying some nasty and mean things that were completely out of character. I said, "This isn't like you." And they said, "What makes you think I'm them?" I remember continuing the conversation and talking to the quote-unquote person for a long time, but I don't remember anything specific. I do remember becoming more and more alarmed and knowing something wasn't right. Finally, I told the person to go home. They complied and left. I went back inside and started telling my sibling about the situation when the doorbell rang. Maybe 2 to 3 minutes had passed. It was the person coming back to apologize for the original fight. They had been driving around town for a long time and didn't want to go home, leaving things unresolved. I asked why they had said some of the things from the last conversation, and they just looked at me like I was crazy. They had no idea what I was talking about. Totally could have been lying, but that whole situation just felt dark. It scared the hell out of me. Story 2. I've had a few things happen to me, but I'll share one that started with my dad and is still going today. My dad grew up in rural Wisconsin. We're talking farms and forests for a few hours before you hit a city, in the 40s. When he was a boy, him and his brother would play in the countryside to their heart's content. And one special place happened to be a nearby property that their family rented for the fields, and a home that lay abandoned. And the home itself was special. It was built before the Great Depression. It was a more rare Southern-style architecture in a Norwegian-dominated area. It had a big open porch, 2 stories with a huge open stairwell, and a massive southern-facing bay window looking into the sitting room, which was to the left of the entryway. At the very bottom of the stairs, there was a piano that had been broken in half by some previous person. One half in one of the 3 upstairs bedrooms, the other half at the bottom of the stairs. My dad and my uncle, who were 8 and 10 years old at the time, were playing in the bedrooms while my grandfather was in the nearby field prepping for harvest. My father was at the beginning of the hall, right at the top of the stairs, while my uncle was in the last bedroom, at the end of the hall. Suddenly, the hair stood up on their arms and the back of their necks, as they heard a violent laughter throughout the house, while someone played a full scale on the piano. My dad and uncle ran downstairs as quickly as they could, and my grandfather, who heard the laughter from the field, ran to the house and literally ripped them from the doorway as they were trying to get out. Later that night, my grandparents, dad, and uncle went back to the house, and my grandfather lit 2 Molotov cocktails and threw one into the open doorway and smashed the other on the porch. The flame spread for a second, but then they heard the same laughter, and the flame suddenly went out. My family stopped renting that land immediately after that. 40 years later, my dad told me this story, and my grandparents verified it. 5 or so years later, I got a flat tire while I was out with my girlfriend. We were on our way back from visiting some family in the North Woods, and it was exceptionally late at night. I hopped out to change the tire, and my girlfriend got out as well. Remember, we lived in Wisconsin, so I carried a safety kit in the car, including thermal blankets and a large flashlight. As she's shining the light around, she says to me, "I see a house over there. Should we see if we can get some help?" I looked up and followed the trail from the flashlight to find my eyes resting upon a rare Southern-style 2-story home with an open porch and a big bay window. It looked abandoned, but was still untouched, and the window was immaculate. I immediately told my girlfriend to get in the car, and I started rushing the tire change. She saw the distressed look on my face and didn't ask why. But just before she got in the car, a few lone piano chords came out of the house. I swear we drove a mile away with 3 bolts on the spare, and then I pulled over to finish the job. As far as I know, that house is still there, just off a main county road in the North Woods of Wisconsin, waiting for someone to come find out what that piano is doing, playing all by itself. Story 3. This incident happened to my aunt and uncle, who are very straight-laced, wholesome Christians. It was the mid-90s. They had just been married, and they were looking for their first place together and were on a budget as both had just gotten out of college. While searching, they found an apartment that was affordable, and they made an appointment to check it out. When they arrived, they noticed the apartment building was adjacent to an old cemetery. The woman showing them the place mentioned that previous tenants had mentioned strange activities in the apartments, things like drawers being opened, doors slamming shut, and a few other things, but overall the incidents were few and infrequent. If you believe in that sort of thing, she said. They didn't think much of it, and maybe because of their religious beliefs, they weren't the easily spooked type, so they went ahead and got their first place. My aunt said that as soon as she got into the apartment, they both began noticing things being moved, drawers opening and closing, and items either being moved to strange locations or gone missing entirely. She said there were incidents almost daily, but that they just tried to ignore it. The 3rd or 4th day they were in their new place, my aunt had just showered and had crawled into bed next to her husband, as he had showered before her. FYI, my uncle usually leaves the room when my aunt tells this story, as it's too creepy for him to hear. So my aunt had just crawled into bed, and my uncle was above the covers reading the newspaper. She was exhausted and closed her eyes to start relaxing before sleep. She said my uncle then turned to her, didn't say a word, and began giggling and poking at her like a playful kid. He was grabbing her arms and legs, sort of play wrestling, if you will. "What are you doing?" she exclaimed, to which he didn't reply. She also said he had an odd look on his face that she'd never seen before, and the whole thing was just out of character. He then rolled off the bed giggling maniacally, and then rolled under the bed and started pushing up on the box spring from underneath. She described it as almost taunting. Then in a loud voice she yelled his name and asked again, "What are you doing?" She then heard my uncle's voice say, "What is it?" She hopped up immediately and found her husband in the living room. His feet were kicked up and he was reading his newspaper. They immediately packed a few things and went to a hotel, and they never spent another night in that apartment. They eventually got out of their lease and only returned with family and friends to pack up their stuff. We'll continue with stories 4 and 5 after this quick ad break. Story 4. This is going to be a bit out there for most people, but what I'm about to type out is true and actually happened to me. If you choose not to believe me, that's fine. I wouldn't expect you to. Just don't be a dick about it. This all happened around late May to early June in 2017. I live out in Kentucky and have been here my whole life. I saved up some money and bought my first AR-style rifle, a Ruger AR-556 for anyone who cares. I had wanted one for a while but never had the money to get one, so as soon as I got a chance I grabbed it. I needed to sight in my gun after I bought it. My family owns 20 plus acres of land, so I don't go to gun ranges around here, because first of all, people are dumb and our local one has bullet holes in the ceiling, and second, I prefer shooting on our own land. I had managed to get a Magpul D60 drum magazine at Gander Mountain because they were having a going out of business sale, so I guess I really was going to sight in the gun and test out the magazine's reliability. I barely had the magazine out of the box and had not gotten a chance to shoot it yet, but I looked up a bunch of reviews and couldn't ever find one that had the problems mine did that day. This is where things start getting strange. My family has owned this land I shoot on for decades. Nothing weird has ever happened out here, that I know of, and I have taken people to the spot this happened at, and nothing has recreated the feelings I had that day. I grabbed my gun, the drum, and 20 rounds of ammo and went outside to cross over to our field. To get to the field, I had to go through a barbed wire fence and about 300 feet of wooded area. The moment I crossed over the barbed wire, something felt off. I have been here over 1,000 times before, and like I said, nothing weird had ever happened down there, and I have never had any weird experiences at all. Something just felt off that day. It was like something wanted me to leave. I kept going though, because nothing had ever happened out here before. I just thought maybe I was being paranoid, or the wind and air pressure were just right to give me an eerie feeling. So I walked on, deeper into the woods. The further I got, the stronger the feeling became. I felt like I was being watched, like something nearby was just staring into my soul. I kept going. I got about halfway, and this feeling was borderline unbearable. I stopped dead in my tracks and thought to myself something is off. Like I've said 1,000 times, nothing like this has ever happened before, but I know something is going on right now. When I grabbed my ammo when I left home, I did not load it into the magazine because I wanted to hurry and get to the field so I could get everything set up. This is where I listened to that gut feeling. I stopped dead in my tracks and loaded the magazine with the 20 rounds that I'd brought. There was this thing that told me something wasn't right and I needed to be ready just in case. Something was watching me, and I didn't know what it was or where it was. As I am loading my magazine, out of nowhere I smell something dead. It just came out of nowhere. I had been standing there for 2 minutes with no scent when all of a sudden, it smelled like a month-old rotting carcass was beside me. I looked around, and directly behind me was a mangled animal that, aside from the smell, looked nearly fresh. It was so mangled, the only thing that gave me a clue as to what the animal was the color of what was left of its fur, which was a gray-white color. It was a rabbit or possum. The smell did not go along with the age of this. Whatever I caught the stench of, that wasn't it. I finished loading the magazine, immediately stuck it in my gun, and held the bolt open. That way if I tripped, my gun wouldn't fire accidentally. For some reason, I kept fucking going. By then, I was nearly out of the woods. I could see the field I was going to dead ahead of me. That's when it happened. This entire time, I've been walking alongside a creek. The creek turns to the left as you approach the field I was going to. As I got to the turn in the creek, I heard a large splash in the water. I turned quickly, and what I saw I'll never forget. This thing was easily 8 or 9 feet tall and stood on 2 legs. Aside from the water splash, it was dead silent. It had very long arms and very long legs. It was a light brown color, almost the color of a deer. I'm updating this to say I got thinking about it the other day. I think it was a much lighter brown than a deer. It still had a grayish brown look to it, but not that dark. Maybe it actually was gray and the lighting made it look a light shade of brown, but it looked like skin, not fur. Perhaps the freakiest thing about it was its size. It looked severely malnourished. It was very skinny and had tight skin across its body. Imagine taking a fully grown man that only weighs 120 pounds and stretching him out to be 9 feet tall, except he stays the same width and doesn't get skinnier as you stretch him out. The thing had somewhat of an odd walk too, but this could have been caused by the mud near the creek bed. It never faced me, so I did not get a chance to see its front. It just kept walking and never turned around. This thing scared the absolute shit out of me, and I was 99% sure I knew what it was. I tried to close the bolt on my gun to chamber around just in case this thing turned around to fight. I had no intention of shooting it unless it gave a sign it was going to attack. If it was what I thought it was, the gun wouldn't have done anything but piss it off anyway. When I tried to chamber around, the magazine would not let go of the round. The force of the bolt closing would break your finger if you were to close it on it by mistake. I had been loading and unloading the magazine the day before to help loosen the spring to make it easier to load in the future. I could literally take the rounds out with my hand. But when I came across this fucking thing, somehow, it decides it wants to keep the fucking bullet. By now, the thing is gone and I'm basically just sitting there by myself. That magazine never worked right again. I kept it a few more days, but had to send it back because it was tearing up my ammo. It would hold onto bullets so tight, the bolt tried to close and just scratched a gouge so deep in the casing, powder was almost leaking out. After it walked off, I realized if I had shot, I would have deafened myself. It caught me so off guard, I almost fired a .556 round in a heavily wooded area without any protection for my ears. I had brought some with me, but I didn't have it on. Now, to answer some questions. What was it? To be honest, I have no fucking clue what it actually was. Me and a friend, who knows more stuff about this than I do, did some looking around and have narrowed it down. Skinwalker, Goatman, or what I'm afraid it is, a Wendigo. If you want a very good idea of what it looked like, look up the Wendigo from the game Until Dawn. Aside from the color, it is exactly what I saw. And before anyone thinks I am just describing the one from the game, I didn't even know about the game until after I had my encounter. When I saw the gameplay later on, it actually made me very uncomfortable because of how much it resembles what I actually saw with my own 2 eyes. Everything I saw matched a Wendigo perfectly. The stench of death, mangling animals to scare and intimidate humans, long arms, malnourished, tight skin. Most are gray, but I have heard about brown ones. Except one thing: its behavior. Wendigos are supposed to be hyper-aggressive and basically kill anything they see or drag it off and eat it alive. So why didn't it get me? It had ample opportunity to, but never did. Why did it walk off and turn its back towards me? I have not told my family, mainly because I do not think they will believe me, and they will think I'm crazy. I think my dad could have possibly seen it, or something else at one point too. Before I saw it, out of nowhere he started burning sage around the house, saying that he liked the smell, even though he has never said he liked it before, and has never burned it here before. Story 5. 2 months after my brother and his wife bought a new house, they had to go out of town and needed their cats fed. Their house and my office are both a good drive from my apartment, but only a few minutes away from each other. My brother said if I wanted, I could just stay over in the guest room rather than driving among the 3 places. So I got the keys and instructions. I was staying there 3 nights, Monday to Wednesday. Monday evening was uneventful until about midnight. I was lying on the living room couch, watching Conan, with a cat lying on my chest. I started to drift off to sleep. The next thing I knew, I was standing in pitch black darkness. I completely freaked out. I had no idea where I was. I felt around in the dark and felt nothing. Finally, I realized there was actually a faint blue light coming from above. I moved toward it and then understood where I was. I was in the fucking basement. The light was coming through the basement door at the top of the stairs, which leads to the kitchen. Just enough moonlight apparently made it through a window elsewhere in the kitchen. I bolted up the stairs, turned on the kitchen light, and closed the basement door. I was terrified until I calmed down enough to come to the conclusion you probably already came to. I had sleepwalked all the way down the stairs, after opening the basement door, which I know was closed. A couple things are important to the story. First, the basement. The house was very nice, actually more than they should have been able to afford. The only exception was the basement. I had only seen the basement once, when I first got the tour. It was totally unfinished and was the one major thing they wanted to fix up. All they had down there was some boxes and the washer and dryer. I had no reason to want to go down there and had kind of forgotten it existed. The other point is that sleepwalking is kind of a thing in my family, almost an inside joke. My brother talked in his sleep constantly and would sleepwalk sometimes, and it always scared the hell out of me. The idea of people doing things in their sleep just creeps me out to the core, and it still does. My brother knew this and would tease me about it, so it was known in my family that I had this phobia. But as far as I know, I had never ever sleepwalked until that night. The image kept playing in my mind over and over of me, asleep, getting up from the couch, walking to the kitchen, opening the basement door, and shuffling down the stairs into total darkness. Creepy as all hell. Anyway, I saw the TV was still on in the living room, playing Wedding Crashers. I watched the rest of the movie, trying to laugh and think of the sleepwalking as a funny story to tell my brother. When I went upstairs to go sleep in the guest room, I stayed asleep. That was night 1. The next morning, in the light of day, it didn't seem that scary. I texted my brother about it and joked around. All day I wasn't bothered one bit. But as I'm walking out of my office to my car, I'm overcome with this sense of dread. All of a sudden, the thought of going to sleep in that house, and maybe sleepwalking again, is scaring me. So I had a plan. I stop at the hardware store and pick up one of those rubber door stopper wedges. At the house, I jam this into the crack under the basement door and kick it in until it's as far as it can go. I test out trying to open the door, and it wouldn't budge. Perfect. Later, I go upstairs and fall asleep. When I wake up, I swear to God I think I'm dreaming. I was standing in darkness again, but this time I know exactly where I am. The smell is the same. The concrete floor under my feet is the same. I look around for the light from upstairs, and it takes me longer to find it because it's farther away. Last night I was only a couple of feet from the stairs. This night it was maybe 10 feet. Again, I can't stop picturing myself sleepwalking. Out of the bedroom, down the stairs, trying to open the basement door, bending down and yanking out the wedge, and then again, slowly down into the darkness. I decided I was turning on the basement lights and they were staying on. I opened the door and flipped the switch to the basement stairway. I saw there was a main switch at the bottom of the stairs. To give you a quick sense of the layout, the staircase splits the basement into two parts. To the right is a small area with the washer and dryer, and to the left is a big open area. Anyway, I walked down and turned on the lights for the whole basement. That's when I noticed something I hadn't noticed when my brother gave me the tour. About 10 to 15 feet away, in the big area, there was a door to what looked like a small closet. This door was closed, but had no doorknob, just an empty hole, so it looked like it would freely swing open. I realized it was very close to where I had just awoken. Then a fucking freaky thought came to me. It was as if each night I was heading to the door and getting a little farther each time before I woke up. As soon as that thought popped into my head, I booked it up the stairs again, left the lights on, and closed the door. I went up to the bedroom, but it took me forever to fall asleep. That was night 2. The next morning, Wednesday morning, I woke up late for work. I didn't think about the basement at all because I was scrambling to get ready. At work though, I was still curious about what was behind the door, so I texted my brother and asked. He replied, "Wait, why were you in the basement?" I realized that when I texted him the day before, I never actually told him where I woke up. So I told him I woke up in the basement, actually twice in a row. After a while, he sends this novel-length text about how the basement is creepy, not to go down there, etc. How they tried putting the litter boxes in the basement and the cats made a mess in the house because they refused to go down there. How he volunteers to do every chore other than the laundry so he doesn't have to go down there at all. He says all this stuff, and it's surprising to me because my brother never believed in the paranormal or supernatural, ever since we were kids. I also realize he never answered my question about the door, but I let it go. After work, I get the same feeling of dread as I'm walking to my car. I really don't want to stay there again, and I decide, fuck it, I don't have to. So I go feed the cats, get my stuff, and drive back to my place. I'm supposed to feed the cats one more time, so I'll stop over in the morning. As I went to sleep at my apartment, I was thinking of all the steps I would have to take to sleepwalk to the basement again. Find my car parked around the block, drive asleep to my brother's house, etc. But this time, I sleep through the night. That was night 3. Thursday morning, I stop at the house as planned. I'm about to leave when I remember that the basement lights are still on. I don't even hesitate to go down to turn them off. There was something about being there in the morning that at the time made it seem fine. When I go down, again that door without a doorknob catches my eye, and it also doesn't seem scary anymore. So, what the hell? Let's see. I walk over to it, and I distinctly remember not feeling spooked at all, until I reach my hand toward the doorknob hole to pull it open. As soon as I do that, and I mean instantly, I feel this electric feeling, like the air before a storm, and I imagine a hand coming through that hole and grabbing mine. It was like 0 to 60, going from no fear to being certain that something terrible would happen if I opened that door. It's hard to describe it other than that electric feeling. I booked it up the stairs and out of the house. A month later, I met my brother for happy hour. We're a few drinks in when we start joking about me sleepwalking and the creepy basement. I tell him he never answered my text about what's behind the door, and he says, "You don't want to know." I was joking at first, but then insisted. Finally, he tells me, and I don't believe him. He's my big brother and has only bullshitted me about 1,000,000 times in my life. This was his explanation. The previous and first owners of the house had a teen daughter that used the basement as her bedroom. The door was her closet, where one night she curled up, took some pills, and died by suicide. The family was going to remodel the basement, but after tearing it apart, realized they couldn't do it and had to move. That was why only the basement was unfinished, and why my brother was able to afford it. The seller had to disclose a suicide happened in the residence. He said if I didn't believe him, to look up the market values of the identical houses in his tract. I know how much they paid for their house, and it was way lower. He and his wife considered themselves rational people and figured it was a bargain, but didn't want to tell anyone. After they moved in, his wife was fine with the basement, but he grew to hate it. He apologized for not saying anything to me before I stayed there, but he never thought I'd have any reason to go down there. Now here's what convinced me. I responded to him, "Okay, the only thing that makes me kind of believe you is that the last morning I was there, I went over to the closet door." And at this point, I see my brother's face change, and I continued. When I went to open it, the air felt like, and at the same instant, I say electricity, and my brother says, electric. At the same exact time. I saw his face and knew he was telling the truth. I've never stepped foot in that basement again, and I haven't sleepwalked since. What did you think of these creepy stories? Do you have scary experiences you want to share on an upcoming show? Comment or email redtreehousepod@gmail.com, and I'll feature it in the weeks ahead. As we close this episode of the Red Treehouse, make plans to join me next time as we continue exploring our scary world. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.